Hi, Carol. Thank you for calling. So terrible. All the death and destruction you witnessed tonight. You are in no danger. Your life is your own. Please know that.
Okay.
Are there any questions you might have for us, Carol? Anything at all?
I guess to start with, what the fuck is happening? Who is we? Why is everybody suddenly we? Who is we?
We is us. Just us.
Who the fuck is us?
Us.
You know my name. You know Helen.
14 months ago, astronomers discovered a radio signal from 600 light years away. It's a recipe, it turns out. Scientists have created this sequence in a lab.
Didn't know any better.
It is not a living thing, per se. It is more akin to a virus. It's kind of a psychic glue, capable of binding us all together.
What the hell is wrong with you people?
We just want to help, Carol.
We will figure out what makes you different.
Figure it out. Why?
So we can fix it. So you can join us.
You are please, Robbie! Psychopaths!
I'm a little late to the party, but Pluribus has officially wrapped up its first season. So in this video, we'll be going over my thoughts and how it went down, and then eventually diving headfirst into Tinfoil Town, discussing why frequencies are so vital to the sci-fi elements and the overarching narrative of the entire show. Pluribus is a show that perfectly balanced its tones and themes. It had a way of navigating audiences' emotions and not only subverting their expectations, but also taking what could be a very existentially isolating incident and making it worth delving into its very seldom few characters. And while some shows mess with your emotions in a bad way, like thinking a character's safe when they're actually not, what makes Pluribus so endearing is that it messes with your emotions in a very good way. From paranoia and fear, to humor, to even boredom and stagnation. The pacing is always fluctuating, but remains consistent in the themes they're trying to show. This is not a series focused on grand, thought-provoking sci-fi mysteries, but it's dead on its characters and how they react, or even overreact, to the situation presented to them. It's one of the few TV shows that plays with the fact that we've seen so many films like this before.
I've seen this movie. We've all seen this movie, and we know it does not end well.
For example, towards the end of one of the episodes, Carol looks under a tarp and is revealed to be shocked. This led over-analytical types like myself theorizing on what could be beneath it, with everyone's first guess, of course, being bodies, and some immediately putting themselves above the rest and saying bodies seems too straightforward and simple, and they wouldn't be wrong. It does seem very built up to be that sort of reveal. However, by the time the next episode comes around, it continues with its pacing and tells us, yeah, there's bodies under there, but as an audience member, you don't really feel like it's that big of a twist. You're more just trying to piece together why they need the bodies. And yet, when the prospect of Carol reaching out to one of the other immune and telling them what's going on with this becomes the most interesting part of the episode, the real twist of the episode suddenly hits, in that Kumba already knew about this. This is piled on with the fact that the Plurbians had already prepared a video explaining to Carol why they need to consume human essence. This leaves Carol and us left to wonder what exactly to do next. Obviously, there's still the big fear that eventually they'll tap into her DNA and forcibly churn her into the hive mind. But when we fall under the illusion that they're still polite and willing to respect her boundaries, refusing to go after her stem cells, we get a dive into the most isolating moment of the entire show. Which is, what do you do when the big catastrophe of the world is finally supposedly done and over? You are seemingly safe with no incoming threats, and you have access to basically anything in the world at your disposal. Carol honestly doesn't know what to do with herself. She starts enjoying things and doing things like buying fireworks, but it's very obvious without this sort of mission to stop the hive mind or a connection to the hive mind whatsoever, she begins to lose herself and fall into a very dark place. This signifies the actual true horror of Pluribus, the thing that every human being needs in order to keep pushing in this world, otherwise they are forced to face the similar existential loneliness that Carol did. And that is, what do you do when you become directionless? It seems Carol needs an attachment to something or to be actively doing something even if it's scary and tough, as when she gives up, she can't seem to embrace the same hedonistic lifestyle that Kumba could. Though I don't think that will last long for him either, as there's a surprising amount of potential layers for his character. But if you want to hear more about my thoughts and theories on Kumba, check out my video I did covering his character. All human beings on this earth need purpose, and while the Hivemind's purpose is to keep this planet's life as prosperous as possible despite losing their own in the process, with the world taking care of itself, what can Carol really contribute? For others, this may result in them simply trying to take from the world and what they have to offer, like Kumba, who is enjoying the luxury of being rich, living in casinos, and having boundless models around him. But he's bound to become quickly bored of that, as he himself is going to fall into the same directionlessness spiral that Carol fell into before she decided to get back on the bandwagon of stopping the Hivemind. But still, had there not been some fine print to the Hivemind's rules in saying that they wouldn't actually target Carol's eggs, then I think Carol would likely subject herself to clinging on to the Hivemind, but eventually feel that same directionless feeling. I think we can all agree that nobody likes the amount of struggle we have to face in this world, but we can also agree that some of this struggle and some of this stress does build not only to the journey we're taking, but in our character and helping us endure future situations or circumstances. However, with the series of Pluribus, Vince Gilligan brought us something that was even more horrifying. He put characters in an apocalyptic situation that results in them basically getting whatever they want. And when you can have almost anything you want, at what point do you simply stop wanting? This also begs the question, how much of pursuing this mission to save all of humanity is simply something to do in this strange new wasteland, and actually them being more altruistic and wanting to put the world back the way it was? While Carol's motives are still a bit questionable considering the back and forth nature of her character, it's obvious, at least by the end of season 1, that Manusos is a character very focused on integrity. He's carrying himself throughout this wasteland and facing its harsh conditions without necessarily abusing the power he actually has. But that does actually raise a question. How much of this is because he simply isolated himself from the world around him and doesn't really understand how the Hivemind works and how easily it could be to experiment and test more things out with them? And how much of this is actually just his choice in trying to fix everything and not take advantage of whatever the Hivemind is? By that I mean, we see that Manusos is completely refusing any aid from any of the Hivemind and not trusting whatever they have to say. However, upon finally meeting with Carol, she opens up the idea to him that he can essentially get what he wants from them simply by asking. I was under the impression he already knew about this, but as soon as he discovers this, he immediately gets to work, ordering one of the Hivemind down so he can run a frequency experiment, which I'll get into soon. It was this moment that clued me into the fact that this was actually Manuso's lack of exposure to the Hivemind and why he wasn't treating them a certain way. Which worries me because I appreciated how much integrity he actually had. But that will go ahead and lead me to the theory section of my video, in which case we're mainly going to be discussing the topic of frequencies. I never would have expected Manusos to be the key character in the sci-fi elements of the show and solving the grand mystery of this Hivemind. And while everyone's focused on the frequencies he's using on the radio and the specific station he's targeting, no one's actually talking about the biological effect of frequencies within our neurological pathways. For some, the idea of frequencies strictly relates to the sonic world, but in reality, frequencies dictate almost everything around us, including who we are. An excerpt I pulled from online claims, "Frequency is the rhythm of life. It is the repetitive movement of energy over time, which we measure in hertz. Everything that exists vibrates at a certain frequency, from light, sound, and color to the cells in our bodies. When we hear a tone or feel a sound, we actually perceive a vibration that vibrates space and our bodies. Science describes frequency as a measurable value, but in reality, we can also feel it. Each of us reacts differently to certain frequencies because our bodies have their own vibration system. The human brain also works on the principle of frequency. Electrical impulses between neurons create a rhythm that we call brain waves. These can be measured using an EEG, which is essentially the brain's version of an EKG, only instead of the cardiovascular system, this would actually be for the neurological system. And we distinguish several main frequency bands that correspond to our state of consciousness. When we are focused, alert, or stressed, our brain vibrates faster. When we relax or meditate, it slows down. This movement between different frequencies affects our thinking, perception, and feelings. And there's proof that frequencies like this actually can manipulate the mind and even cause some form of mind control. Here's an example now. This, coupled with some of the actions we've seen and how the hive mind reacts to things like anger or different things Carol can do, proves that Manusos was actually on the right path in studying these frequencies and potentially finding a way to bring someone out of the hive mind. Which leaves the question regarding where they'll go in next season. With Manusos already reading books and studying up on things like Christology, is it possible they'll utilize some form of a crystal to free everyone from the frequencies? Put your tinfoil hats on, because we're about to go on a journey down why I think that's exactly what's going to happen. Take a look at experiments like MK Ultra or the Montauk Project, things that the show like Stranger Things were based off of. In studying of human beings and giving them different drugs and sensory deprivations and making them some sort of individual with telepathic powers. Some claim to utilize these experiments and training to be able to perceive things through other people's lenses, kind of like Eleven would do in Stranger Things, utilizing different frequencies. Now, most of this was because a certain psychoanalyst and biologist in Wilhelm Reich in the 1930s had discovered a substance known as orgone. Orgone was considered a massless, omnipresent substance that was almost considered to be a sort of life energy, or claiming that most of the energy of life was made up of orgone. While it's still considered a pseudoscientific concept, he did end up developing devices like an orgone accumulator, something that supposedly cured people of their diseases, as most of his works and writings were completely burned and destroyed, or perhaps taken and utilized elsewhere. Now, hypothetically speaking, let's say this isn't actually a pseudoscience and there was some merit to this orgone energy as a whole. Would this mean that utilizing something like orgonite could actually help free some of the hive mind from being infected by this frequency? People utilize orgonite based on Dr. Wilhelm's research in the hopes of filtering toxic energy, getting rid of EMFs and negative vibes, all in the hopes of restoring balance and positivity within oneself. And we know frequencies can be pushed out and relayed through many different forms and vices. So, should they not actually end up going the crystal route and redirecting these frequencies and freeing anybody? I could also see them directly targeting where these frequencies could still be coming from on planet Earth, potentially in the same satellite fields we saw in the opening of the series, or some new location we haven't even heard of yet. Again, there still is a little bit of mystery for where the governmental powers all went, and how exactly the entire military were brought down so swiftly. Still, with the idea of Vince Gilligan saying that this show could be 4 seasons, I have a hard time seeing why they would take so long to reach this point, especially now that Manusos and Carol are basically on the same page. However, there is still a way to keep the narrative going after this point. See, a show, through every season, has to find a way to bring new aspects and change to the narrative in order to keep people drawn in. Whether that's a new antagonist, a new plot device, or just a new circumstance altogether, at some point, dealing with the plebeians and their kind nature will become stale, especially by season 4. And if I'm still hearing the voicemail boxes of the hive mind now pushing Manusos away for a long 10-minute scene, I'm gonna lose it. But my theory, personally, is that they'll find a way to either readjust the frequencies or free someone from the frequency that's taking them over, and get maybe 1, 2, or just a couple people free and away from the hive mind as a whole. However, rather than cure them and bring them back into their own individual mind state, instead, it could potentially infect a chunk of the hive and adjusting their frequencies so their emotions are less happy, less obedient, less subservient, and maybe more irritable, more aggressive, or potentially during its final season, more violent. Again, there's a lot of pros to a virus outbreak like this, but depending on how Manusos and Carol tamper with things, they could essentially make things a lot worse. Why I think it would be funny to have the hive mind be a little rude and not necessarily violent towards Carol and the immune, maybe treating all of them a little cruelly, especially considering how Goomba's been treating them. I do think, in the worst case scenario, if they happen to turn the hive mind completely violent or doing the polar opposite of what they're doing now, which is preserving all life, that would turn Pluribus into an absolute horror series, which seems like too big of a tonal shift for the series to take at this point in the story. Still, with all this talk of different frequencies, I'm having trouble piecing together how exactly the DNA aspect comes into play, as the hive mind mostly transfers this virus through their own perspiration. And how can one frequency adjust such a mass number of human brains or neurological pathways at once? And how does utilizing an immune's DNA and adding it to whatever they're adding it to change the frequency as a whole? And have I said the word frequency way too many times in one video? I'm not quite sure, but for now, all I know is all this sci-fi has made my brain hurt a little too much. So if you want to keep following the channel, I'll be dumbing it down with some Wasteland fun and covering Fallout, as well as going a bit more medieval with shows like Primal, House of the Dragon, or even Rings of Power, which will probably lose me quite a few subscribers, but hey, I guess I just like it. Either way, let me know what you guys think, if you have any theories on how this series could go, on if they should incorporate more sci-fi aspects, or maybe just stick to the awesome character development they have going on at the moment. And should there be enough decent theories, I'll be making a part 2 to my comments and theories video like I did last time with Pluribus, as you guys usually have quite a few creative ideas. Either way, with a show like Pluribus, it reminds us why isolation, especially the existential kind, can be really damaging to the soul. And hey, with how crazy things are getting politically, depending on where you live, it's important to remind ourselves that we should come together, support each other, and be kind to each other. If you feel alone, reach out to others and make an effort to find others who can make you feel less alone, as 1,000 voices are always louder than one. And while that perfect world may never exist, you can still make a difference by just reaching out to the person nearest to you. All it takes is giving each other a chance and providing ourselves the opportunity to come together. There's no reason to be one out of many when we could be many against the seldom evil few. Either way, appreciate the support, stay safe, and enjoy the rest of your day.
200 years of planning in order for everything to go just right. That seems like a lot of work if you ask me.
Obsolescence. It's a heck of a thing. You know, I try and see it from your perspective. But it's hard to imagine being so dim as to be caught off guard by the inevitable.
Plans are hard. Chaos, though. Chaos is easy.
Power. More than all of human history could ever conceive.
Okie dokie.
Patrolling the Mojave almost makes you wish for a nuclear winter.